I feel like these last two videos, this being the third one, have all started off with apologies. But I'm going to apologize. I've recorded 1 John chapter 5, drug my feet on getting it posted. It is posting like right now. So I said I'm not going home until I get this one recorded. And if you watch that one, we finished up 1 John. And it was a debate between, are we going to just go 2 John, 3 John, or let's go somewhere else. And somebody this morning said, man, Exodus has just been on my heart. So here we are. We're going through Exodus. So this morning we did it. And I wanted to do a little backstory here for those of you that are not familiar. We're going to be talking about a few people right off the jump here in Exodus. Joseph being one, Jacob and all of his sons. And if you don't know the story, Jacob had 12 sons. His favorite was Joseph. And it was very blatant. It was evident to the other brothers that, hey, our brother Joseph is Dad's favorite. They didn't like it. They were jealous. He was getting all kinds of gifts. They were going to kill him. They were like, hey, well, let's not kill him because that would be a sin. So let's just throw him in a pit. Threw him in a pit. Slave trader came into town. They said, hey, let's get some money out of this. That'll be cool. So they sold him to a slave trader who then took him to Egypt. When he got to Egypt, he was elevated. He could interpret dreams. He saved basically through a famine massive amounts of people. And his brothers thought he was a slave, and he ended up interacting with his brothers years and years and years down the road, ended up saving them, making sure they had food and stuff through the famine. And because of that, he was elevated to just below Pharaoh, right? So this guy who was an Israelite ended up being second in command in Egypt. And so this is a long, long, long time past that. And so starting in Exodus chapter 1, these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. So he's saying that Jacob is bringing his other sons and their families, total 70. And then Joseph's already there. Verse 6, then Joseph died and all his brothers and all that generation. So the people who were getting along with Pharaoh and the Egyptians and were respected, they all died. And Pharaoh had died, right? So it's a new chain of command, new people in charge, new all that stuff, right? So everything that was set, all the relationships that had been built from these families through these people was kind of forgotten, right? And the respect that they had for one another was forgotten. The reason they had that was all forgotten. Verse 7, but the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. So they're doing what families do. They're having a bunch of, Jacob had 12 kids, 12 sons. So these families, that is what they do. They populate. They have these massive families. Now, in verse 8, now there arose a new king over Egypt, a new Pharaoh, who did not know Joseph. So, again, like I said, this is years away from when all that happened. They kind of forgot the story. They kind of forgot the respect they had for the Israelites. They forget what they did for one another. And he said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. What he's saying is, they're starting to outnumber us, right? 70 of them came here, joined their brother in Egypt, and now they're outnumbering us, right? And so one of the things we talked about is like, what happened? Egypt was established. They had a rather large culture, rather large civilization. The Israelites started with 70, around 70, maybe a few more than that. How were they able to outgrow this population of Egypt? And one of the things we kind of talked about was Egypt was very they were kind of ahead of the time. They were kind of where we are now, right? This self-love, chase your dreams, focus on you, um, riches, wealth, um, and so if I'm a man and I get married and we decide we're not going to have kids, we have more wealth to take with us into the afterlife, because the Egyptian culture believed all this wealth, all the gold, all the everything I have, I can take with me. And so it's kind of where we are right now as a culture is I have to chase my dreams, self love, do me. I want to travel, so I can't have kids. Like people think once you have kids, like life is over. Um, I've only got two, and I would say that has not limited us uh, very much. Now we get to do with our kids, and we just live within our means, and we trust God. And if He wants us to go on these trips, great. But the Egyptians, and we think this is speculation, nothing guaranteed that is written out, and we know these things for sure. It is all just kind of information gathering, right? Of this is what we see in our culture. People aren't having kids, or they only have one or two. Um, and the Israelites, their culture was many kids, and so they outgrew this population. And it wasn't like, hey, let's be friends with these people that are multiplying and doing this stuff. It was fear them, and then what if they join our enemies? You know. So I try to think, when did that history repeats itself, right? There's multiple times that happens in history, but for us, the most relatable one that I could think of was Nazi Germany, right? Uh, the Jewish people um, owned businesses, owned wealth, were intelligent, had these families, um, and Hitler and his crew managed to twist these lies into, hey, we've got to kill them before they take over, and we have nothing, right? And they dealt with them shrewdly. And that's exactly what Pharaoh did here. You look at the slaves, right? During the American Civil War, it was these people over there, let's use them, let's sell them. Why? Because we have to cut down this, we have to control this population. We do not want this population to grow. So they stole them, they sold them, they worked them, and then they really kept a close eye on the population growth because they did not want that to grow. And so it continues to happen over and over and over again. And you look at our civilization now, we're in this spot where people don't want to have kids. People don't want to have families. They don't want to grow. They want to focus on, what do I want? What do I want to do? And so that's something to really consider is, if you don't want this group of people to be able to control and dictate what you do, don't stunt your population growth. I'm not saying deal with them shrewdly, and because we'll see what happens here down the road. Verse, where did we leave off at? 9. Oh no, 10. We finished 10. 11. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, which is like storehouses, places for them to store more wealth, treasure, even food. Pithom and Ramses, the statues, to build stuff, right? Give them tasks, make them do these things. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. So again, and the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. Why? Not because they were actually doing anything to make the Egyptians worried, right? They were working for them. They were doing what they said. Hey, we need you to build this. Okay, we did it. They just continued to grow. And because this lie was put in their head that they were going to take them over or whatever, they continued to freak out and they got worried. So in 13, they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves. So it went from, hey, let's just burden them. Let's just give them a lot of work to do, and maybe it will slow down. But think about it. If you have more and more work get put on you, and I have a farm, right? Let's say I have a farm. I've got a bunch of animals, a bunch of crops. I can do it all on my own, or I can have a few kids that will end up growing up and helping me manage those things, and we take care of one another. Community. That's what happened. They got burdened with more, so they grew more. The more pressure you put on something, the more it wants to grow and blow up, right? And so it freaks out. So now they're working them as slaves. And 14, and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. 15, then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live. Right? It's like modern day where we're at now, right? Modern day abortion, modern day, not what we want. Kill them, right? But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. As long as you respect God more than the authorities pointed over you, as long as you respect God and fear God more than you fear the legal groups and the politicians over you, they could have been beheaded, got their heads cut off. I guess that's beheaded, right? Yeah, hung, tortured, whatever the case may be. But none of that mattered to them because they feared God more, which is important. I think we're lacking in that as a church and as a church body. I think we're lacking in that. I think we fear things on the earth more than we fear the punishment of God. So, 18. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, why have you done this? And let the male children live. The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. Right? First thing that popped into my head is like, well, that's going to happen when you have 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 kids. Kind of get used to it, right? And they just start sliding out on their own. And she knows what she's doing. She's like, oh, I did this 10 times. There's a baby. If the Egyptian women are only having 1 or 2 kids, it's like, oh, this hurts really, really bad. This is awful. I don't want to do it anymore. So they only do it once. So they want the midwife there. The other thing that was brought up, one of the guys said was, it's God, right? God allowed them to have a maybe easier birth, so they continued to grow and made the Egyptians a more grueling birth, so that it helped with that stunt. And God's working in all things, right? Like, oh well, and maybe they were lying. Maybe I don't know. There's a lot of options there that where God's hand was at and what He was doing in that time. But to think about, you guys are kind of whiny. Throw a fit when you're having kids, so we got to be there immediately. They just pop them out. I don't know. It's almost like a smart comment too, like a little disrespectful. Like, well, your women are just weak, and they just pop them out. Um, 20. God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, He gave them families. Right? So they weren't supposed to have families. They're supposed to be just taking care of everybody else and popping babies out. When God gave them family, blessed them. He blessed them. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. So it went from a secret objective, a secret mission of, hey, you're going to be in there, you kill them. Just between us, you do it. And then you see it's not working, so he makes it a decree. Hey, if you know that the Hebrew lady next door had a baby and it's a son, toss it in the Nile. But let the daughters live, which is a little to think about, is a little different, right? Because they can still have Hebrew babies and they're going to be like mixed. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just the wild thought. But that is the end of chapter 1. It's a lot of like setup, build up. And this is all like historically documented, right? So this is not like something that you're only reading here. You can read these stories anywhere, Egyptian history, all that stuff, right? It was talked about. It was documented. It was discovered many times, years and years and years ago, that these types of decrees were placed, and the babies that were tossed into the Nile and eaten. It's phenomenal. So that's Exodus chapter 1. We're going through Exodus. Exodus is a long book, I believe. What? Holy cow! I didn't realize it was that long. Look at 40 chapters. Yeah, 42, 40, 40 chapters. So 40 weeks, probably longer than that. But yeah, that's Exodus chapter 1. Great start. A little bit of a backstory. So just um, if you want to, read a little bit of that backstory. Go into Genesis a little bit. Read in there some of that stuff. It's just there's a lot that is going to be going on here, um, and I think some of it's important to have a little bit of the backstory, and we'll kind of go as we go through it with some of that, and remember some of that. And I'll try to recap some of it as well. The workout we did today was some lunges with knees to a bag, some like landmines with two hands up the middle, bear crawl, crab walk, planks, sit-ups, bag throw. Then we got some rounds of sparring in. So good little workout, good little sweat going. I cooled off a little bit before I did it because I was dripping all over my desk and my notes and my Bible, and I wasn't trying to have everything soaking wet when I wrap this thing up. So there you have it. That is Exodus chapter 1. We're taking it way back from 1 John all the way back. So, yeah, stick with us. I think this is going to be a fun ride. I think Exodus is going to be really exciting, very revealing, especially comparing from where we were to the history we've gone through to where we are now as a culture. Um, I think there's going to be some relevance, and I try not to think of it as the Old Testament, but as the first testament to God, and then we have the Second Testament because it's not old. You think outdated. You think useless. Um, but yeah, that's it. Some prayer stuff. August 6th, we got our back to school block party, back to school bash. Come out, support us, hang out, get some food, play some games, and let us know what it is in your life you got going on that we can pray for you. It'll be a good time. Um, that's all we got. Let us know what your thoughts are on Exodus, where you're at with all that. If you can make it on the 6th, join us next Saturday if you're a male and want to dive into Exodus chapter 2. Exodus is exciting. There's a lot of cool, miraculous stuff that is going on throughout this whole book. So, yeah, we look forward from hearing you guys. God bless you guys. Love you. Stay safe this weekend, and God bless.